And we have a judge who's highly conflicted, and he's keeping me from campaigning. He's an appointed New York judge. He's appointed. You know who appointed him? Democrat politicians.
Former President Trump there going after the judge in his New York hush money trial once again. Something we have seen before, but you want to know what is new? The revelation of a secret recording between Trump and his lawyer turned convict turned nemesis, Michael Cohen, the star prosecution witness who finally took the stand today. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, the former Trump lawyer who already went to prison for what's at the heart of this case, finally took the stand in that Donald Trump hush money trial. And he said the same thing he's been saying ever since he turned on Trump and went to federal lockup for campaign finance violations. The then candidate Donald Trump knew that if the Stormy Daniels affair story broke, it would be a disaster for his campaign. But it wasn't just his word today. Prosecutors also played a secret audio recording from Michael Cohen between him and Trump, where it sounds like former President Trump is telling Cohen to pay cash to buy the Karen McDougal story.
I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
Funding, yes. When it comes time for the financing, which will be...
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So,
I'll pay the cash.
No. I got... No.
NBC's Yasmin Vesuvian has more.
Today was an incredible day of testimony from Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former fixer, day one on the stand for him. They painted a picture early on of a man very loyal to the former president of the United States, who began working for the Trump Organization in 2007 and for Donald Trump himself, in which he took care of many legal annoyances for the former president over his time working for him. And then there was 2015 and 2016, in which Donald Trump was running for president. There was the revelation of the Access Hollywood tape, the Karen McDougal story, and then the Stormy Daniels story, the lead up to the election, in which Donald Trump was angry about the revelation of these stories, wanted Michael Cohen to take care of it, as Michael Cohen alleged. It was how Donald Trump was worried about how he would fare with female voters and how he was polling with female voters and how that would play if these stories were to be revealed. There was an exchange between Susan Hoffinger, an attorney for the people, and Michael Cohen. And it went like this. Susan Hoffinger said, and I quote, "Would you have made that payment to Stormy Daniels without getting sign-off from Mr. Trump?" And Cohen said no. Hoffinger said, "Why not?" And Cohen said, "Because everything required Mr. Trump's sign-off. In addition to that, I wanted the money back." And then there was Exhibit 35, admitted into evidence. This was a bank record, a bank document, in which Alan Weisselberg essentially scribbled on that paper how they would gross up Michael Cohen, the $420,000 payout that was made to Michael Cohen, to pay back the $130,000 that was paid to Stormy Daniels, along with making him whole with his taxes and his bonuses as well. An essential piece of evidence to the prosecution today. They will go into direct tomorrow as well, Michael Cohen remaining on the stand, and then things go to cross-examination, in which Todd Blanche, lead attorney for the defense, will certainly go after Michael Cohen, his credibility, also being a convicted felon. More to come, certainly tomorrow. Gadi, back to you.
Now let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, so let's talk about this tape. It seems like this might be a smoking gun if we were talking about a payment made to the former Playboy model. But is this also a smoking gun in this case with Stormy Daniels?
No, it's not a smoking gun. It certainly is interesting. In fact, it's arguably evidence that is too prejudicial to come in. I mean, this is the kind of evidence the judge already ruled on, but it is a kind of prior bad act evidence. Now, the problem is the prohibition against prior bad act evidence has gigantic holes and exceptions to it. So it's coming in as kind of evidence of how these guys did business in catching and killing stories. So, no, it's not a smoking gun. It's very damaging to Trump, but it's not even probative of any of the elements of this crime. It's only probative of a payment to Karen McDougal, whose payment is not part of any of the charges in this case. So, no, I wouldn't say it's a smoking gun. The smoking gun would be direct testimonial evidence that Donald Trump was aware of the bookkeeping the bookkeeping that led to the false entries in business records. I don't know that they get there by just saying Donald Trump told Michael Cohen to go pay people and characterize it as something else. That might be an issue here. If they get that kind of evidence on the bookkeeping, then maybe we can talk smoking gun.
Yeah, such an important distinction there. And we haven't seen the defense go after Cohen's credibility yet on the stand, but we know that's coming. So what do you think that's going to look like?
It's going to be bad. I mean, they're going to tear him up. He's like any other cooperating witness with really bad credibility issues. And, here's an interesting thing, though. When you have a witness like Cohen who has so many credibility issues, do you run the risk of getting into too many ticky-tack statements that he's made that are false in the past? For example, defense counsel with Stormy Daniels focused on things like, did you say you walked to the hotel, or did you get a ride, or did you have dinner, or did you not have dinner? I've been there. I'm not criticizing them. I've been there where you have a witness with a million different credibility issues, and you start hyper-focusing on every one, not realizing that maybe the jury just won't think it's that big a deal if a witness gets, a couple things wrong about whether what the, I don't know, what the floor tiling was of the hotel. You want to hit the major points. And Michael Cohen has so many that I would imagine cross-examination is going to last longer than the actual direct testimony.
Danny Savalos, thank you. And turning now to Louisiana, a very close call that could have been a mass shooting at a church holding First Holy Communion. Police say a teen armed with a rifle was taken down by members of the parish at the church's entrance. And this was all before any kids were hurt or shots were fired. NBC's correspondent Priya Sridhar has the details.
Absolutely terrifying moments captured on camera. This all happened at St. Mary Magdalene's Church in Abbeville, Louisiana, about 20 miles south of Lafayette. It all unfolded around 10:30 in the morning on Saturday, and you can see someone walk up to the pastor of that church, Reverend Nicholas Dupre, whisper something into his ear. He then stops conducting the services, tells everyone to sit down, and starts praying the Hail Mary. Then you see chaos erupt, altar boys running across the stage, people screaming and trying to run in different directions. And then you hear a voice over the loudspeaker essentially telling everyone to get a hold of their children and that a child has been taken into custody and apprehended. And what we now know about that suspect, according to the Abbeville Police Department, is that he is a white 16-year-old male who was dressed in all black and entered the church through a back door with a rifle. But members of the congregation were able to basically take a hold of him and escort him outside as they were calling 911. The police then arrived and did a sweep of the church to ensure that there was no other shooters there. That 16-year-old boy was then taken to the Abbeville Police Department, where he was interrogated with a parent before he was then transported to the Abbeville General Hospital's behavioral health unit for an evaluation. He's now being charged with 2 counts of possession of a firearm for a juvenile and also terrorizing a church. The FBI and the Vermilion County Sheriff's Office is investigating this case. Gadi?
Shreya, thank you. And over the weekend, we saw pro-Palestinian protesters at graduations across the country.
About our commencement speaker.
Now, that last one at Duke University, dozens of pro-Palestinian graduates and people in the audience actually walked out of the commencement just as Jerry Seinfeld was about to speak. Seinfeld has been pretty public about his support for Israel over the last few months. Meanwhile, Johns Hopkins University said yesterday that they reached an agreement with student protesters to end their encampments and, get this, promise to never restart the encampments again. And NBC News' Elwin Lopez joins us now. Elwin, so that agreement that was made with Johns Hopkins, how did they come to an agreement where they were going to take down the encampments and also never do them again?
Yeah, so they took down the encampments over the weekend, and now that is essentially because the university officials talked to the student protesters, and they said, listen, we're not going to restart it. But it was only because they were able to reach an agreement. So the agreement is that not only will Johns Hopkins consider the potential for divesting from Israel, but also they're going to take it one step further and stop all student conduct proceedings with of course, the exception of, allegations like harassment, property damage, any of those serious threats, but still a huge step forward for these students.
And that was enough for them to just pack up camp.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when it comes to seeing some of these viral clips, I mean, it's one thing to see them circulating and you kind of feel like it's happening everywhere. And it's another to live it when you're at a commencement speech. But how much is this actually impacting students?
Yeah, so I was at Pomona College, actually, and that's one of the colleges that decided, listen, we're not going to scrap our commencement ceremony altogether. We're just going to move it. But they moved it more than 30 miles away. And not only that, Gadi, the other thing they did was said, you know what, we're not going to have this at 10 a.m. We're going to do it at 6 p.m. So a lot of the people I spoke to there said, I came into town, I flew into town to be here with my loved one. In one case, a man said, I came here to celebrate my niece, and now I'm not going to be able to do that because I have to be back at work on Monday. So a lot of these soon-to-be graduates now graduating without their loved ones.
Yeah, ripple effects there. And when it comes to this push for divestment, we've been talking to a lot of the student protesters, and they say they've been pushing for divestment. This is what a lot of people don't know, well before the war broke out, right? So as we go into this summer, is there a chance that this fizzles out and dies, or is there a chance that we could continue to see this next semester and semesters on, even if there's a ceasefire agreement?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this is going to be fizzling out. And I can tell you that because some colleges have said, listen, like Columbia, they said, we're not going to divest. It's not even an option here. Other colleges have said, we're open to dialogue, but you saw at Duke University that this is no longer just a student protest, okay? There are parents that are there at these commencement ceremonies, and they're walking out with their family members, these students, and saying, you know what, we don't agree with the campus's policies. We're protesting the war in Gaza, and they want to see significant change here. And to take it one step further, these universities, some of them haven't even responded at all. So they're going to have to do that either before they break for the summer or before they come back in the fall.
Definitely a semester that will go down in history. Alwyn,
Absolutely.
Thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Open fighting between Israel and Hamas militants in northern Gaza again. NBC's Richard Engel is on the ground with more there. Plus, a charity run by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has been declared delinquent by the California AG, and that means they can't raise money or spend money. So how did this happen? Well, Dana Griffin is going to be here to explain. And later this hour, the future of tipping. Some restaurants are opting to get rid of tipping and just pay their workers more. Is that a business model that actually works? We'll take a look.
I think a lot of people are familiar with the downsides of tipping and the tension that can arise, say, between front and back of house when people are making such different, wages.
Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. A plane with 3 people on board made a wheels-up emergency landing in Australia today. Here's the moment it happened. That small plane right here skidding off into a field of grass, fortunately. The pilot reporting the plane's landing gear failed, and it circled around for a while before it finally touched down there safely. And the U.S. is sending a delegation over to Switzerland addressing AI use with China. They're trying to prevent some potential risks with the technology, like concerns over deploying nuclear weapons with AI. And this marks the first formal bilateral talks on AI between the two countries. And police in Turkey made quite the discovery when a man was trying to smuggle valuable poisonous spiders and scorpions out of that country. And it turns out the guy was actually a curator at New York's American Museum of Natural History. He was arrested with dozens of his bags seized containing over 1,000 animals. He's now facing smuggling charges. And a volcano in Indonesia erupted today. It's on a pretty remote island, but it spewed thick gray ash way up into the atmosphere, and it was a quick eruption, apparently just lasting about 5 minutes long, and there haven't been any evacuation orders so far. Meanwhile, more tension is building between the White House and Israel. On Meet the Press yesterday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken had some pretty harsh words for Israel, saying their war strategy isn't going to eliminate Hamas.
We also haven't seen a plan for what happens the day after this war in Gaza ends. Because right now, the trajectory that Israel is on is, even if it goes in and takes heavy action in Rafah, there will still be thousands of armed Hamas left. Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas.
And that comes as Israel intensified attacks in northern Gaza today in an area that was once free and clear of Hamas. Meanwhile, the United Nations says over 300,000 people have fled Rafah in the last week alone. That's like as if Pittsburgh up and left that city. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is on the ground with more.
Fighting has broken out once again in northern Gaza. This is an area that Israel claimed it already cleared out, that it already destroyed Hamas's battalions in and around Gaza City. But now Israel has resumed airstrikes in Jabalia, which is right next to Gaza City. It's actually connected to Gaza City, showing that Hamas has been able to regroup. And it is devastating for the people who are living in Jabalia because the fighting had moved on from there. So with the belief that it was safer, people had started to move back to their homes if they could find their homes. There's a lot of destruction in Jabalia, and now those people who had moved back are finding themselves leaving Jabalia once again. Now, in the deep south, that is the main focus of the Israeli military campaign against Hamas right now, in and around the city of Rafah. Rafah is right along the Egyptian border. We still do have a crew in Rafah, and all day they have been talking to people who are fleeing their homes. They were told to evacuate by the Israeli army. Israel has been sending out SMS messages, dropping leaflets, telling people to move to an area along the Mediterranean coast. According to the UN, more than 350,000 people have already left the Rafah area trying to find safer areas. But people that our crew have been speaking to have no confidence that where they're going to be going is any safer than where they are right now. They are also angry with the United States. They heard President Biden warn Israel several days ago not to go into Rafah. They heard President Biden say that the United States would withhold weapons from Israel if Israel moved into Rafah. Yet Israel is now carrying out strikes in the center of Rafah. People are leaving from central Rafah. Israeli troops so far haven't pushed in with heavy weapons and tanks into the most densely populated parts of Rafah. They are still concentrated mostly in the eastern part of the city, but evacuation orders have been given for large parts of the city, and people are trying to move any way they can to try and find what they hope will be a safer area. But I can tell you there is a great deal of frustration, a great deal of anger after people have moved time and time again from the north, then to the center, and now finally to the south, to the Rafah area, only to be told they were safe there, only to be told they'd be protected by the United States if they stayed there, and now they're finding themselves on the move yet again.
And over in Ukraine, Russian forces have taken over 9 more villages over the past few days, leaving Ukrainian forces outnumbered in one of the biggest border offensives since the start of the war. Explosions in the background as Ukrainian police evacuate people who live in the area of Kharkiv, all while plumes of those dark black smoke clouds fill the sky behind them from constant shelling by Russian forces. At least 4,000 people have fled Kharkiv since Friday when Russian forces started this latest push. And this all comes as Russian President Vladimir Putin is shaking up his military leadership. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from London. Matt, so we're seeing this offensive, and now we're seeing a new minister running defense in Russia. Are they both connected? And what does this all say about what we're going to be seeing in the next few months?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're connected or not. I mean, there's been fighting ongoing on that border region and in the area where we're now seeing some modest Russian advances over the past couple of weeks. So, you know, this is probably just coincidence. This is probably just an opportunity. But the fact is that we are starting to see Russia gaining the upper hand on the eastern part of the country around Kharkiv, as you said. So this could start to change things. Now, what event this is more likely tied to that shakeup in the upper echelons of the Kremlin is, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, winning re-election for the 5th time. This is what has empowered him with that, even if it was widely regarded as a sham vote, to restructure his cabinet and to try to find a new approach to this war that is now stretching well into its 3rd year and is really, causing a lot of problems domestically back at home. A lot of people are asking questions about why Russian boys aren't returning to the home front, and that's something that he has to prepare for politically, and he's taken this new mandate as an opportunity to do so.
A new mandate from, as you said, a kind of a sham election, as many people see it. What do we know about this new Russian defense minister?
Yeah, well, this guy, it sounds like, is basically, has no experience in military. But that's actually was the same thing for Sergei Shoigu, who's the outgoing defense minister. He's the guy being replaced. But this is a man who has spent most of his career dealing with economics issues. And that is one of the things that Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin, said when he announced this change, this shakeup at the upper reaches of the Kremlin. He said that because defense spending and internal security spending is now reaching nearly 8% of Russia's GDP, he said, kind of like back in the 1980s, just before the Soviet Union fell. It's kind of an ominous comparison, that Russia needs to focus both its defense and its ability to continue this war alongside its economic capabilities. But you know what? There's another way of looking at this, which is basically that this man who is now going to be in the defense ministry post, he is somebody who has stewarded the economy as deputy prime minister of Russia for the past 2 years in a way that was very positive. Russia faced the strongest sanctions that any country has really ever faced in history ever since it invaded Ukraine, and yet the Russian economy is still doing very well. So he is being rewarded, Sergei Shoigu, the sitting minister of defense. That war has not been going well, and he's being demoted. So that's kind of one way of seeing it.
Interesting. And we just showed the map a little bit ago. I was wondering if you could walk us through the strategic importance of Ukraine's northeastern border. Could this be a turning point in this war, this offensive that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, that's unclear, and it kind of depends on who you ask. I mean, when you speak to some experts, they say that these are significant gains, but others say that they are just simply part of the vicissitudes of war, the back and forth. Somebody takes some land, sometime that gets given up. These are things that happen in war and that they could change at any time. But the fact of the matter is, this is now well more than 2 years into this fight. Russia has had very, very few battlefield victories to claim. And so while this doesn't necessarily look like a huge victory, it's one among very few, and that's what makes it significant.
Matt Bradley, thank you so much. And coming up, an explosive cleanup at that cargo ship bridge disaster in Baltimore. Why teams had to blast twisted pieces of the key bridge off that cargo ship, and what the crew that is still on board was doing when those explosions happened. But first, you gotta see this. This is a 106-year-old man that just reclaimed his Guinness World Record for oldest skydiver. After the jump, he said, "If you think you can't, you're underestimating yourself." Here's how it all sounded.
Go! We just broke the world record!
I lost my breath.
You lost your breath?
I can't hardly talk.
You're looking good, buddy.
Hey, welcome back. The California AG is calling out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's fundraising foundation, calling it delinquent, and that's more coming up in just a moment. But first, here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. The driver of a speeding Tesla slammed into a power pole and the wall of an empty building in Pasadena, California. 3 people died in that crash. 3 others were seriously hurt. A preliminary investigation found that the driver might have lost control of the car on a slight curve and that alcohol may have been a factor. And over to Sacramento, where a high school rowing team was shot at in the middle of a race last month. Now, video shows the group rowing on the Sacramento River when splashes from at least one bullet's impact can be seen just feet away from the boat. You can see that splash there. Luckily, no one was hurt, and it's all under investigation. And in the small town of Funner, California, well, they've sworn in their new mayor, and it is none other than actor Martin Short. The Only Murders in the Building star will take over as mayor for the next 2 years, and his stint follows some other big names like Jane Lynch and David Hasselhoff, but don't expect him to weigh in on any policy making there. His term as mayor is a promotional one, and Short vowed to protect fun, good times, and positive vibes. And Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are making some headlines for delinquent reasons. The AG here in California declared their charity foundation delinquent, ordering them to stop raising or spending money. And it seems like it may be over some annual fees the Archwell Foundation failed to submit. That's according to the filings from the California Registry of Charities and Fundraisers. But a source close to the Archwell Foundation says they weren't even aware that the check they sent was never received until the notice was filed, and that a new check is already on its way. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin joins me now. Dana, so it seems like a big deal for an AG to come out and call a charity delinquent, but everything's kind of a big deal if you're a royal. So
exactly.
How does this all work?
And I think that's the reason why we're talking about it, because the Duke and Duchess's names are attached to this foundation, but so are several other people that are part of their key, board of directors, so to speak. And so in this particular case, if they want to clear it up, they simply just have to send in a new check. So even the spokesperson for the Archwell Foundation asked, like, hey, we asked them what happened. They pretty much said everything was filed on time. Part of the filing was a physical check. So because the check had never been received, they said, well, we sent a new one, and they essentially hope to have this cleared up within the next 7 days.
So this could all go away. I mean, direct deposit maybe could all go away if that's in the future?
Exactly. It sounds like it. It sounds like maybe an accounting mistake. Maybe it was a mail mistake. But they say, hey, we didn't even know that this was delinquent until we received the notice. So they are now working to fix it. But it's tough because in the meantime, they cannot collect money or also disperse funds. And they're working hard. We just saw them in Nigeria several days ago, trying to bring attention to their charitable causes. So obviously not a great time to be in the news for having a delinquent charity. But hey, it happens.
If you're a royal stateside, I guess you can't catch a break.
Exactly.
Dana, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And in Baltimore, most of the bridge that collapsed on top of that cargo ship has been moved out, but what was left could only be cleared by blowing it up. Take a look from just a couple of hours ago. That was a 600-ton chunk of the interstate that was shattered by explosives that had been pinning the Dolly cargo ship that was stuck after it crashed into the bridge in March. Now, the goal is to break all of it off for removal, then reopen that shipping channel. But get this, during that detonation, the 21-person crew was still aboard the Dolly, sheltered in place. They have not been allowed to leave since the crash, which is still under investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board. NBC's George Solis joins us now. George, thanks for being with us. The explosion is one thing, but the crew's still on board. I mean, you watched that video. What was that about?
Yeah, Gadi, what you saw was really just a feat of engineering. I mean, they told us this is exactly how it would play out. The Army Corps of Engineers did, and it did exactly as it was supposed to. So what they ended up doing was making little cuts into that support structure there that was on board the Dolly, the steel beam, and then boom, it went off. You heard the explosion, then you saw it go right back into the Patapsco. They said the crew had to stay on board should anything have gone wrong. They are familiar with the vessel, and it would have been the best resource for them to actually put out any kind of fires or anything that may have gone wrong. Of course, the objective here was to make sure that they were safe, so they were below deck. And as we saw, nothing happened. The steel structure there, of course, blowing up as it was supposed to. And now begins the arduous process of further breaking down that steel span, which will take a few days to remove. And the idea here is to move the Dolly from where it's been frozen in time, essentially, and get it back to the port of Baltimore, Gadi.
Wow. And speaking of the port and speaking of the channel there, what's the impact of the shipping channel being closed, and how long is it going to be closed, and when could it reopen?
Yeah, well, huge, right? I mean, It's been impacting millions, if not billions. It's going to take about roughly 1.4 to 1.9 billion to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge, and that could take a course of about 4 years. And you're also talking about 100 million to 200 million of cargo that passes through the port every day. Those are huge numbers. And you're talking about the people that work that are affected by this. It's about 2 million in wages that was at stake every single day. And so you heard Governor Wes Moore today at a briefing saying, look, it's an iconic bridge. Everyone loves it, but it's not necessarily about the nostalgia here. This is about the infrastructure. It's about making sure that that bridge gets rebuilt and it gets rebuilt correctly. So, of course, there's going to be some kind of arguments about the funding, but the bottom line here is that it's going to get fixed. It's going to go back up. And right now, the crucial part of this was making sure that the steel span on board the dolly was removed so they can now gently float the vessel back to the port of Baltimore. And mind you, of course, there's still investigations into all of this and how it went wrong, if anyone knew anything about this before it actually collided with the bridge. So obviously that's going to continue even after the vessel is back at the port, Gadi.
It's still so wild to think that that thing is still floating. Do we know how soon we could see that towed back into the port?
Yeah, so a couple things that are happening right now. Immediately after the detonations went by, you had crews already sort of surveying to make sure all of those charges went off as they were supposed to. And they're still going to, believe it or not, have to cut more sections just to make sure they can get all of that debris out of there. I mean, mind you, there's already channels that were open to make sure some commercial vessels could go to and from, but they're going to continue to make sure they can break it down. And then the idea here is at the low tides, gently float the dolly back to the port of Baltimore, and they're hoping that they can get that done within about 2 days. But again, they're not trying to rush this. They want to make sure they do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. George, thank you so much. And still ahead, wildfires sparking mass evacuations in parts of Canada, smoke turning the skies black there. The efforts to fight dozens of fires and impacts being seen and felt in the United States. That's all coming up after the break. Hey, welcome back. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. 3 people died after a shooting took place at a May Day party in Alabama over the weekend. 15 more people were hurt. And now police are urging people to come forward with any videos that may show who was responsible. Almost 1,000 people were at that party, including families with kids. And police think there may have been more than one shooter. Right now, there are no known suspects. And today, jury selection started in the federal criminal trial of U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. He is charged with accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes, including some in gold bars, in exchange for official acts. And the senator has pled not guilty. The judge told the pool of prospective jurors the trial could last 6 to 7 weeks. And officials say a suspect accused of fatally shooting a police officer Saturday night near Cleveland was found dead yesterday. Officers were first dispatched to a home where a caller said she and her child were threatened by the child's father. And when the officers went to check the backyard, they say they were ambushed. Officer Jacob Durbin was shot and killed. And officials say the suspect was found dead in an apartment, but they did not give any other details. And today, more than 5,000 Mercedes-Benz workers began voting on whether to join the United Auto Workers Union. This comes as the UAW looks to build on recent victories in the South. Just last month, workers at Volkswagen voted in favor of unionizing, and voting will continue this week with final results expected on Friday. And today, thousands of parents and child care providers across the country called out of work and closed their doors because today is National Day Without Child Care, and the goal is to press lawmakers for affordable child care and better pay for educators. Meanwhile, in Canada, thousands of people are being told to leave their homes immediately because of wildfires raging across the country. And this is more than 100 active fires currently burning right now. You can see the huge clouds of smoke. Firefighters say dozens are out of control, and the smoke from those fires has traveled down here to the United States, triggering air quality alerts across 4 states. This is what it looked like in Minnesota this morning. The haze is so heavy, the whole state has warned people to limit their time outside. Now, if this is all sounding familiar, that's because this is the second year in a row we have seen smoky skies across the country. Remember when everyone in New York was freaking out when the sky was orange? Well, last year, the smoke from Canada's wildfires traveled all the way down to Florida, with smoky skies seen in more than a dozen states. Now, emergency workers in Canada say they are preparing for a last stand. And NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has more.
Hey, Gadi, we're keeping an eye on wildfires raging in Western Canada, but the impact also stretching into the United States. But first, taking a look at those fires, I spoke earlier with the mayor of a municipality, which includes Fort Nelson, a small town. They say it's a population of around 3,500 people. And the mayor says that that community has been fully told to evacuate. But he says that dozens of people, somewhere around 100 is their estimate right now, are believed to have stayed behind, which, of course, can put the first responders at risk, as well as those people who decided to stay. At this point, when I spoke with the mayor earlier today, he said that the fire was not moving in the direction of the town. However, it was nearby the town. That prompted that evacuation. And the mayor said that they are moving resources to be able to make a stand against the fire if it is moving into the town. Here's part of my conversation with that mayor.
What you see in the far distance behind me is not cloud. That is smoke. That is the fire. And so it's from where I'm standing right now, it's about 2.5 kilometers from me. It's a roller coaster. 1 minute it's clear in town. But if the wind stops, the smoke sort of rolls in and lays here in the little bit of a valley that we've got, and then it's really, really smoky.
And meanwhile, the wind from those wildfires can blow smoke into the United States. We saw that earlier in parts of Minnesota, in parts of Wisconsin. Take a look at the Twin Cities. This was the scene there earlier today. And there were parts of the country that had unhealthy air quality throughout stretches of the day earlier as we were following this story. And this is something that's reminiscent of what we saw last June in particular. You might remember those apocalyptic looking scenes, the Manhattan skyline, downtown Detroit, the Washington Monument, all of these American cities were essentially under a blanket of smoke. We are not seeing that kind of movement of smoke at this point in the U.S., but it's something we'll be keeping an eye on. Gadi?
Jesse, thank you. And being a firefighter is one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. Men and women risking their lives every day to put out fires and rescue people from burning buildings, right? But what if their protective gear was also putting their lives at risk? NBC's Gadi explains.
Water coming?
Lieutenant Magali Sadie is teaching the next generation of San Francisco firefighters about what to expect on the front lines.
There you go. Our whole job is to work under pressure, manage your emotions and your fears, and get the job done.
Regardless of how dangerous it may be.
Regardless.
That includes the risks they can see and the ones they can't. Sadie is a 2-time cancer survivor. Here in San Francisco, female firefighters have a 6 times higher rate of breast cancer than the national average. For first responders, ongoing exposure to smoke and other chemicals is so serious. The WHO classifies firefighting as carcinogenic. And in recent years, studies have shown even the pants and jackets firefighters wear are made with materials known to cause cancer. So-called PFAS are added to fire clothing to repel flammable liquids and resist extreme heat. They're known as forever chemicals because they don't easily break down once absorbed in the skin.
To put something in the equipment to people who are already there to risk their life for you seems really malicious.
We're tired and we're dying. On the steps of San Francisco City Hall, behind a mound of uniforms, firefighters and lawmakers recently announced plans to enact a first-in-the-nation ban on protective gear manufactured with forever chemicals.
It is morally right and it's financially right.
But alternative gear that doesn't use PFAS still isn't widely available, even though the potential health hazards have been known for years.
The Firefighters Union blames industry standards released by the National Fire Protection Association, saying they favor the use of fabrics that contain forever chemicals. In a lawsuit, the Firefighters Union accuses the NFPA of being reckless and deceptive, which the NFPA denies, calling the allegations misguided and ill-informed. The NFPA tells us it doesn't create or dictate standards, but instead relies on expert volunteers, including the firefighting community. New PFAS-free uniforms are now being tested at fire departments in at least 5 cities, including San Francisco, where firefighters say so far they're just as effective repelling flames.
So that char goes all the way through.
Chemists at NC State are currently testing if those alternative fabrics are reliable with long-term use.
We don't want to just trade one hazard for another.
We can break it down.
Lieutenant Sadie says she's fighting for PFAS-free uniforms so firefighters can focus on saving lives instead of worrying about their own.
This would affect the future, and if it changes and legislation goes forward, then yeah, then it was all worth it.
Begat Shaban, NBC News, San Francisco.
Incredible reporting, Begat. Thank you. And if you're lucky enough to live anywhere north of Colorado, really, the Cosmos just delivered an epic light show, painting the skies with those electric greens and purples, all thanks to a wild solar tantrum that collided with Earth's magnetic field. And NBC's Liz Kreutz tells us more.
When you think of the Northern Lights, you probably don't think of Baker, Florida, Wendover, Utah, or San Rafael, California.
Look at that.
But for a brief moment this weekend, a trek towards the North Pole wasn't necessary in order to see this stunning natural wonder.
I can't believe what I'm seeing.
Sightings of the Northern Lights, called the Aurora Borealis, reported across all 50 states.
It's amazing.
The striking pink and green hues, the result of a severe solar storm that slammed Earth, leading to colorful bursts of electromagnetic radiation from the sun. The last time there was a storm this size was 2003, before iPhones and social media.
The most beautiful thing I have ever seen.
It's beautiful. Around the world, skygazers also reporting rare sightings at the University of Manchester in the UK, in Brocken, Germany, and yes, at the Great Wall of China. Like the recent total eclipse, this breathtaking glow again bringing so many of us together, making our massive planet feel simultaneously more magical and yet interconnected than ever before. Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
What a light show. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. We are talking the tipping point for restaurant workers. Why the model customers have grown up with might eventually be history. The big role tipping is playing in the fight for living wages. Stay with us. And now for the future of everything, we have talked a lot about deep fakes and AI-generated videos and images targeting celebrities and politicians. But now kids in high school and younger are finding their own images being altered into nude versions, often at the hands of the people in their classes. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro takes a look at the growing problem and the legal challenges to stop it.
Teenagers across the country faced with a new kind of threat at school, AI-generated nude photos of students like Francesca in New Jersey.
I did start crying because I was very emotional.
Stevie in Illinois.
It was just immediately felt like nauseous and gross because, like, yeah, it's my face there, but that's not my body.
And this teen in Florida who doesn't want to be identified.
It makes me feel violated.
The images created by classmates, some made with nudification apps and spread among students, parents grappling with the fallout.
We do believe that they have been potentially posted online. We've been referred to the National Center of Exploited Children.
Stephanie Essex says her daughter Stevie was one of several students at Richmond Burton High School northwest of Chicago who found out explicit AI-generated photos had been created by a classmate. The school's principal telling NBC News in a statement they are unable to discuss an ongoing investigation involving students. This is Stevie's prom picture that she posted to social media last year. The image was then altered. Her face merged onto a nude body.
If you didn't know they were fake and you didn't know the situation, you were just showing it to a random person on the street, they would believe it's real.
Legislation around AI-generated images, even of minors, is murky in most states because the photos aren't considered real. At the federal level, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also a victim of AI-generated porn, has introduced a law to allow victims to sue someone for creating non-consensual AI-generated content, calling it digital forgery. Some states like South Dakota, Louisiana, and Washington have passed their own laws to combat sexually explicit AI images of minors. Several others, including California, New York, and Illinois, have introduced legislation.
It has to be punished and stopped.
Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul pushing a bill to clarify the state's child pornography laws to include AI-generated images.
How do you even address that when it's a teenager creating this AI content?
Well, part of what we do when we put laws on the books is we try to create a deterrent.
Some students have faced consequences. 5 were expelled from a Beverly Hills middle school earlier this year, accused of creating AI-generated nudes of other 8th grade students.
This behavior will not be tolerated.
Beverly Hills police launched a criminal investigation they say is still ongoing.
You want to see criminal charges in this case? There absolutely should be criminal charges.
In Stevie's case, 2 minors were arrested, according to the state's attorney's office, charged with a total of 34 counts of child pornography.
For the victims or the targets, it could change the trajectory of their lives, and for the perpetrators, it can change the trajectory of their lives.
Devorah Heitner, parenting and technology expert and author of Growing Up in Public, Coming of Age in a Digital World, says policing alone won't solve the problem.
We really want to focus on prevention, teaching kids how to use these tools ethically, and taking an educational and not just punitive approach when it does go wrong.
What are your prom shoes?
Stevie's mom not shying away from speaking out.
If being louder about it means that there's more legislation that gets up faster so that people can be held accountable, then that's what we're going to do.
While Stevie is going to prom again this year.
Prom pictures are part of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely nervous for posting that. I just hope those don't end up on the news too.
So disturbing. Valerie, thank you. And turning now to another story when it comes to the future. We are living in divided times these days, but there is one thing that everyone of all political stripes seems to agree with. We got to figure out something on the way we are tipping. And NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung took a deep dive for us into the future of the tip.
To tip or not to tip? That's the question, at least for some restaurateurs. The gratuity model has been tied to American dining for hundreds of years. So when Evan Hangzor opened up Little Egg in Brooklyn last year,
I'm Evan Hangzor, I'm the chef at Little Egg.
He tried to scrap it entirely. For customers, that meant no tip on the receipt, just sign and go.
Maybe a lot of us had felt during COVID this sort of rise of tip fatigue, to come in and have a meal and just pay what's on the menu and not have to do any math at the end.
The goal of no tipping? To equalize pay between wage-earning back kitchen staff and servers in the front of the restaurant.
I think a lot of people are familiar with the downsides of tipping and the tension that can arise, say, between front and back of house when people are making such different, wages.
Without tips, Little Egg paid all staff front and back $24 to $25 an hour. But 10 months into the experiment, Hangzor reversed. Little Egg lowered prices and brought tips back, in part because consumers were willing to pay more if they get tack on gratuity.
What was the main driver for that switch?
Really just trying to allow our staff to make more money, particularly in the front of house.
Hangzor says the psychology of tipping makes it hard to abandon it.
For a workforce that still to this day, since 1938, is still overwhelmingly women, disproportionately women of color, struggling with the highest rates of both economic instability and sexual harassment of any industry because they have to put up with so much from customers to get their income in tips.
Saru Jayaraman is the director of UC Berkeley's Food Labor Research Center. She also leads One Fair Wage, a national organization of 300,000 restaurant and service workers and over 1,000 restaurant owners. The group argues that the solution is to lift the minimum wage for restaurant workers to the same minimum wage as most other industries, while allowing them to continue earning tips.
Word minimum, if you look it up in the dictionary, means that you're not supposed to earn less than that. And yet we have so many different workers who can legally be paid less than that minimum by their employers.
Currently, 15 states have a subminimum wage of $2.13, 28 have a subminimum wage somewhere above that, and 7 states have abolished it completely. One Fair Wage says abolishing the subminimum has led to greater restaurant sales and even more tipping, because restaurant workers with higher wages are then able to dine out and tip better as well.
Could you see yourself going back to a no-tipping model at some point?
Yeah, I think so. I think if there's a way to make it easier.
Consumers don't appear to notice the difference.
Tipping is always it's kind of a mandatory thing for me. Not mandatory, but if I enjoy the experience, it feels good. It's pretty easy to do.
And on the matter of the sub-minimum wage and states that have already banned it in favor of one fair wage that would include service workers, well, there are at least 5 states that this year, 2024, could consider banning the sub-minimum wage as well, including Michigan, Arizona, Ohio, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, with potentially more states in the years to come, meaning this battle is far from over. Gadi.
Far from over. Brian Chung, thank you. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, Stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.